It's a Monday morning, 8:47 a.m. A large, open-planned office in a mid-sized tech company, the kind with standing desks, a kombucha fridge, and a Slack channel called water cooler. The head of marketing, let's call her Rachel, walks in, confident, polished. She has been with this company for 6 years. She built the marketing department from a team of 2 to a team of 11. She grabs her coffee, opens her laptop, and sees an email. Not from a client, not from her CEO, from HR. The subject line reads, "Confidential. Please come by at 10 a.m." She doesn't know yet what's coming, but we do. What happens when two people make a private decision and the entire company pays the price? Today's case is about an office affair, but it's not really a love story. It's a story about power, about secrecy, about how one couple's choices slowly poisoned an entire team's trust, and what the psychological research tells us about why this happens over and over in workplaces all over the world. I'm going to take you through the full story, every detail, and then I'm going to break down exactly what was happening psychologically for each person involved, because understanding the motive changes everything. Let me introduce you to everyone involved, because in a story like this, there are no simple villains. There are just people with blind spots, desires, and very poor judgment. Rachel, head of marketing, 34. 6 years at the company. Respected, results-driven, high performer. Known for working late, demanding standards, and, according to multiple colleagues, being fiercely loyal to her team. She is also married. 2 kids under 5. A life, by all appearances, that looks exactly like what she had planned. Daniel, VP of Sales, 41. Daniel joined the company 18 months ago. He was brought in from outside, a big hire, big promises. He has the easy confidence of someone who has always succeeded. Charming in meetings, great at presentations. His team's numbers are good. He is also married. And he is Rachel's direct peer. Same level, different department. They work closely together on product launches. Megan, marketing coordinator, 27. She is 2 years into her role. She adores Rachel. She has learned everything from her. Rachel has been a mentor, a champion, the person who pushed her into presenting at the all-hands meeting for the first time. Megan is observant, detail-oriented, and, as we will see, very, very uncomfortable with what she eventually notices. James, CEO, 52. Founder, visionary type. Trusts his leadership team implicitly. Has a firm no fraternization policy for direct reporting relationships, but Rachel and Daniel are peers, so technically, nothing in the employee handbook applies. Here's how it starts. Rachel and Daniel begin working together intensively on a product relaunch, a 6-month project with high visibility, late nights, strategy sessions, tension and momentum, and that particular electricity that comes from building something together under pressure. According to Rachel's own account, posted years later on Reddit under a throwaway account, she knew it was a mistake from the very first time she stayed late in his office. She went home that night and told herself it was nothing. It was not nothing. For 3 months, Rachel and Daniel conduct their affair in what they believe is total secrecy. They are careful, or so they think. Separate cars, no texts on work phones, meetings scheduled as strategy sessions in calendar apps. But here's the thing about offices that people always underestimate. People who work together every day are extremely good at reading each other. Megan notices first, not because she snoops, because she pays attention. She notices that Rachel's posture changes when Daniel walks into a room. She notices that when Daniel presents in meetings, Rachel's eyes move differently, not the evaluative scan of a colleague reviewing data, but something else, something private. She notices that on Friday afternoons, both of them are suddenly in client calls at the same time, every week. She doesn't say anything, not yet, because saying something means choosing between loyalty to Rachel and the creeping discomfort that something is very wrong. Megan tells Reddit, "I felt like I was being asked to unknowingly participate in a lie, and I hadn't agreed to that." This is a crucial detail. We'll come back to it. By month 4, small things start to shift. Rachel begins advocating hard for Daniel's department in budget meetings. A campaign that should have had a $200K allocation gets pushed down to $140K so sales can have more headcount. Her own team notices. They say nothing because she is the boss. Daniel, for his part, begins citing Rachel's team's data in his presentations, sometimes without attribution. He has access because of the joint project. The line between collaboration and appropriation blurs. There's a moment, a single meeting, that becomes the fault line. A junior member of Rachel's team, a man named Tom, presents a campaign concept that Daniel has privately heard about through Rachel. In the meeting, Daniel casually suggests a nearly identical concept as a thought he'd been having. Tom goes pale. Rachel says nothing. She says nothing. That's the moment everything starts to rot. Tom goes to Megan that afternoon. "Did that just happen?" he asks. "Did she just let him steal my idea?" Megan doesn't have a good answer because she is starting to understand exactly why Rachel said nothing. This is where the story accelerates. Tom begins documenting. Quietly, methodically, he keeps a log of instances where he believes Rachel has compromised the team's interests for Daniel's benefit. 3 months of notes. Dates, meetings, decisions. He goes to HR. Not to expose the affair, he doesn't have proof, and he says that explicitly. He goes to document a pattern of what he describes as compromised leadership. HR opens an informal inquiry. They speak to several team members individually, and then, as these things always do, the dam breaks. One of Rachel's team members, a woman she has worked with for 4 years, is asked in her HR conversation whether she had noticed any changes in Rachel's decision-making. She pauses for a long time, and then she says, "I think she's in a relationship with Daniel." Just like that. 4 years of loyalty, and it takes one honest question in a private room to make it crumble. HR escalates to the CEO. The CEO calls Rachel in. The conversation is described by Rachel herself as the worst 45 minutes of my professional life. He doesn't yell, he's disappointed, which is, as most people know, worse. He tells her the affair itself isn't a terminable offense, but the budget decisions, the meeting incident with Tom, the pattern of compromised judgment, that's a different conversation. Daniel, in his own meeting with the CEO, does something that becomes the defining action of this entire story. He says, "I was just being friendly. I didn't realize she had feelings for me that way." He distances himself completely, rewrites the entire narrative to place himself as the passive recipient of someone else's feelings. Rachel finds out what he said via a friend in HR on a Thursday afternoon. She resigns the following Monday. Daniel keeps his job, gets a new direct report, and, according to an update Rachel posted 8 months later, is now reportedly doing the same thing with someone on his own team. Okay, let's slow down and examine what actually happened here. Not from a moral standpoint, but from a psychological one. Because every person in this story was acting according to patterns that psychologists have studied and documented extensively. None of this was random. All of it was predictable. Let's go through it. The first thing to understand is this. Rachel and Daniel believed their relationship was a private matter between 2 consenting adults. And in a vacuum, maybe. But they weren't in a vacuum. They were in an organization. Organizational psychology has a concept called ambient trust, the background level of confidence that team members have that decisions around them are being made fairly and in good faith. It's largely invisible until it breaks. When Rachel stopped advocating for her team's budget, even once, ambient trust cracked. When she failed to defend Tom in that meeting, it cracked further. Her team didn't need to know the reason, they just felt it. The ground shifted. Research from the Academy of Management Journal consistently shows that teams whose leaders are perceived as having external loyalties to a partner, a friend, another department show measurable declines in psychological safety within weeks, not months, weeks. The affair didn't just affect Rachel and Daniel, it restructured the invisible social contract of an entire team. 2. Megan's dilemma. The psychology of the unwilling witness. Let's talk about Megan for a moment, because her experience is one of the most psychologically interesting parts of this story, and one of the most common. What Megan was experiencing has a formal name in organizational psychology. It's called complicity by proximity. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had no knowledge that could be classified as insider information, and yet she felt morally implicated. Why? Because she understood, intuitively, that her silence was a form of participation. Every day she said nothing, she was, in her own mind, co-signing the lie. This creates a specific type of psychological distress that researchers call moral residue, the lingering discomfort that comes not from what you did, but from what you chose not to do. It accumulates, it affects performance, it erodes the joy of work. Megan wrote, "I started dreading Mondays, not because of my job, because of what I knew and couldn't unknow." This is the invisible cost of workplace affairs that never gets measured in the HR postmortem, the mental health toll on people who were never even involved. 3. Tom's response, the documentation instinct and why it works. Tom's choice to document is psychologically fascinating. It is, fundamentally, a trauma response, but a remarkably adaptive one. When people feel that the rules of fairness have been violated, especially by someone they trusted, there's a predictable sequence of psychological responses. First, disbelief, then anxiety, then a search for certainty. Am I imagining this? Is this actually happening? Documentation is how the brain tries to anchor itself in reality. By writing things down, dates, specifics, exact words, Tom was doing something that therapists actually recommend for people experiencing gaslighting, creating an objective record that exists outside of his own memory, which he knew could be doubted. He also made a strategically intelligent choice. He went to HR not to expose the affair, but to document compromised decision-making. He kept the narrative focused on behavior and impact, not on personal moral judgment. That is a masterclass in institutional navigation, whether he knew it or not. 4. Daniel's move, recognizing covert narcissism in the workplace. Now, let's talk about Daniel. What Daniel did in that meeting with the CEO, the "I didn't realize she had feelings for me" reframe, is one of the clearest examples of what psychologists call DARVO. DARVO stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It was identified by Dr. Jennifer Freyd at the University of Oregon, originally in the context of abuse dynamics, but it appears with remarkable frequency in workplace settings, particularly among individuals with narcissistic personality traits. Let's break down what Daniel actually did. Step 1. Deny. He denied the nature of the relationship. "I was just being friendly." This reframes two mutual participants as one person acting normally and one person misinterpreting. Step 2. Attack. Subtly. By saying Rachel had feelings for him, he implicitly suggests she was the unstable one, the one with unchecked emotions, the one with poor professional judgment. Step 3. Reverse victim and offender. Daniel exits the narrative as someone who was potentially misled or taken advantage of by a colleague's inappropriate feelings. He is now the person who requires sympathy. Rachel is the aggressor. This maneuver is devastatingly effective in institutional settings because HR processes are designed to evaluate discrete, documented incidents, not the underlying personality dynamics that produce them. And here is the most chilling part of the psychology here. People who execute DARVO this fluently have almost always done it before. It is not improvised. It is a practiced survival strategy. The update from Rachel that Daniel was already showing similar patterns with a new colleague, that is not a coincidence. That is a personality pattern reproducing itself in a new context. 5. Rachel's core psychological wound, the splitting of self. Rachel is the most complex figure in this story because she was both a victim of Daniel's behavior and responsible for her own choices. What happened to Rachel psychologically during those months has a clinical name: identity fragmentation. She was operating simultaneously in two completely incompatible roles: the high-integrity leader who had built a team's trust over 6 years, and the person making small, incremental decisions that betrayed that same team. Psychologists who study moral disengagement, Albert Bandura's work is the foundation here, describe the cognitive process by which people temporarily suspend their own ethical standards in order to continue a desired behavior. It usually involves one of these mechanisms: moral justification. This relationship makes me a better, more focused version of myself. Minimization. One budget meeting won't change anything. Diffusion of responsibility. The system allows this. We're both consenting adults. Rachel was likely cycling through all three, which is exactly why she said nothing when Tom's idea was taken. In that moment, protecting the relationship was the priority, and her brain had already built an elaborate scaffolding of reasons why this was acceptable. The resignation, in this context, was not defeat. It was, psychologically speaking, a restoration of self-coherence. The only way back to the person she recognized as herself was to remove herself from the situation entirely. So, what do we actually take away from all of this? I want to give you 5 things. Not rules, not moral pronouncements, just psychological realities that this story illustrates very clearly. 1. In organizations, there is no such thing as a purely private decision. Every significant choice a leader makes is filtered through their other commitments, loyalties, and relationships. This isn't unique to affairs. It applies to friendships, external investments, family pressure. Cognitive bandwidth is finite. When part of it is occupied by a high-stakes secret, the rest of your judgment degrades. 2. The people closest to you in a workplace will always notice first, not because they are spying, because humans are exquisitely evolved social detectors. Micro-expressions, vocal patterns, eye contact duration, our bodies leak information constantly. Thinking you've hidden something from a team you work with daily is almost always an illusion. 3. Silence has a cost for the people who stay silent. Megan's story is a reminder that the ethical burden of workplace dysfunction doesn't fall only on the people directly involved. The witnesses, the ones who know and say nothing, they pay a psychological toll. If you are in that position right now, please know that discomfort is not a character flaw. It is a healthy response to an unhealthy situation. What you do with it is up to you. 4. DARVO is a learnable pattern. Learn to recognize it. If you ever find yourself in a conflict where the other party ends up positioned as the victim of their own harmful behavior, and you leave the conversation feeling confused about what happened, that is a signal worth paying attention to. The confusion is not an accident. It is the intended outcome. 5. The hardest recoveries are from the compromises we made with ourselves. Rachel didn't just lose a job. She lost a version of herself she had built over 6 years. That is the real price of moral disengagement, not the external consequences, but the internal discontinuity. The path back is real, but it takes longer than any HR investigation. Every story in the motive files starts with a question that seems simple. Why would a smart, successful person do something so clearly self-destructive? Why would someone rewrite reality so smoothly that even they believe it? Why would a whole team fall silent while something wrong was happening in front of them? The answer is never simple. It never is. But understanding the psychology, even imperfectly, gives us something. It gives us a language for what we experience and a language for what we see happening around us. That matters more than most people realize. If you've worked in a place where something like this happened, or if you recognized yourself somewhere in this story, I'd genuinely like to hear about it. The comments are there. Use them. See you then.